Hello, future PMPs. Welcome back to my channel. This is Prachi Joshi. Welcomes you to PMP Prep course. Today we are going to learn about time management. In the previous session, we learned about project charter, project management plan, and scope management plan. Today we are going to talk about time management plan. Hello, future PMPs. Welcome back to my channel. This is Prachi Joshi. Let's dive right into it. So, as other management plans, we have schedule management plan first of all. Again, just to give you a brief, what is schedule management plan or any management plan? It includes the how of any of the management plans, if it is subsidiary or project management plan. Any management plan includes the how of that knowledge area, right? So here, schedule management plan is a document where you describe everything about how you're going to manage the schedule of the project. Next, define the scope, define the activities, sequence the activities, estimate activity resources and duration, and finally develop the schedule. Again, all these are in sequential order. You cannot just develop the schedule before defining the activities. So these are scheduled. Now these are in sequential order. Although this is in PMBOK 6th edition, all of these components in the process groups and knowledge areas are very, very important for your exams. So you need to understand them. No matter if you are giving your exam, even though it is PMBOK 6th or 7th or 8th edition is going on, you need to understand all of these concepts. These are very foundational concepts. All right, so you know what is schedule management plan now. Then you define the activities. So let me pull up this. You already know what is activities or tasks or items. So in the previous video, you learned about what is scope management plan, and WBS dictionary. So all of the information from WBS and WBS dictionary, you import it to schedule management, right? So you import it while you are creating the schedule. Here in the project management column, you can see the tasks, which are the smallest component in the WBS, that is work breakdown structure. You write down all the tasks. You write down all the activity ID numbers from the WBS dictionary. The ones you see 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 are all imported from the WBS dictionary, as we learned in the previous section what is WBS dictionary. All right, so we import information from WBS and WBS dictionary. Then you sequence it. Once you have the list of tasks, you sequence it. Once you sequence these tasks, you add the resources. How many resources would you need for each task, and how much time would each task take? Like for example, for 1.1 task, it takes 3 days to complete this activity. If you see 1.4, the task takes about 5 days. So each task is not divided evenly. So you need to write down how many days each task would take. This is a tool which you use to create and define the schedule. It is a very popular tool. You sequence the activities, and you can use a lot of PM tools which are out there in the market for creating the Gantt chart. There you sequence the activities, add the duration for each activity, and then create the Gantt chart. So this is something about how to develop the schedule. So you import the information from the WBS and WBS dictionary. You add the resources and the duration, how much you will need for the project, and then you make the schedule out of it. Now let's learn about estimating tools. There are different tools which you can use to estimate the schedule. Those are expert judgment, analogous estimating, parametric estimating, bottoms-up estimating, 3-point estimation. And it has 2 different types: Tringular, also known as beta, or PERT. So let's go into each one of them, what it means and what it includes. Expert judgment, as the name suggests, the experts, we take the judgment from the experts who are the SMEs and estimate the schedule accordingly. For example, an SME has done previous project, similar project, and they come and say, for example, this project would take about, or this task would take about 3 days or 5 days. We take that into consideration because they have that experience which is needed for the estimation. Let's dive right into it. So As other management plans, we have schedule management plan first of all. Again, just to give you a brief, what is schedule management plan or any management plan? It includes the how of any of the management plans, if it is subsidiary or project management plan. Any management plan includes the how of. Next is analogous estimating. Analogous estimating is also known as top-down estimating. So this estimating tool is nothing but it takes the historical data, looks into the historical data from the similar project done in the past in the company or the organization, and estimates according to it. Parametric estimating is historical data plus statistics from the projects we have done in the past. Since parametrics has statistics involved, it is more realistic and reliable. Another one is bottoms-up estimating. Bottoms-up estimating, if you remember the WBS work breakdown structure, you roll up each task and say the bottomest task would take 2 days, for example. Then you go roll it up and you see the next task. For example, A to Z. Z is the last task, you roll up. If Z takes 2 days, you roll up. The next Y task takes about 2 more days. So total, according to it, you'll take, so you just roll up the estimation. Next is analogous estimating. Analogous estimating is also known as top-down estimating. So this estimating tool is nothing but it. Lastly, the 3-point estimation. It has Tringular and PERT. Tringular, if you are noting down all of these points, note down and understand these points, Tringular and PERT, because it is very, very important for your exam, might appear in your exam. So write down the formula. Tringular is optimistic plus most likely plus pessimistic divided by 3. And PERT is optimistic plus 4 into most likely plus pessimistic divided by 6. Since PERT takes more weightage on most likely, the results are more accurate. So if you get a chance, do PERT in your real life as well, because it gives more weightage to the most likely value. Here are some more tools which you need to understand for your exam. Those are schedule crashing, Fastracking, lead, lag, and float. Schedule crashing, you might have experienced it in your organization where you add more people to get the task or the project complete. However, for schedule crashing, since it requires more people in the project, more budget is required. So the budget increases. Unlike the fast tracking. Fast tracking is something where we start the tasks, we overlap the tasks that would normally be done in a sequential order. Here, you are not adding more resources, but you are still trying to get the end date closer of the project, but you're trying to do tasks instead of sequentially, you start simultaneously. Lastly, the 3-point estimation. It has Tringular and PERT. Tringular, if you are noting down all of these points, note down and understand these points, Tringular and PERT, because it is very, very important for your exam. Lead is nothing but a predecessor activity can begin in parallel with the successor activity. It is also known as accelerated time. For example, editing video may take 5 days, and task B is adding a background music, which may take 2 days, but you start 2 days before editing video ends. So on the 3rd day of video editing, you start with adding the background music. So in the last 2 days, you do it parallelly, but you finish it before A finishes. So that's something called lead. Lag is the opposite. It is called as a wait time, where you have to wait for the first activity to be some time to elapse for the first activity for the successor activity to start. For example, in a construction project, you have to wait until the concrete foundation has been dried up. Lead is nothing but a predecessor activity can begin in parallel with the successor activity. It is also known as accelerated time. For example, before we start framing the house. So it is very, very important to wait for that time period. That is lag. because the schedule, we need to lag in schedule. It is, stretching the schedule. We have to wait until a task has been completed and the time has been elapsed. So that is lag. Now let's learn about float in detail before we start framing the house. So it is very, very important. So this might seem a little overwhelming to you at first, but it's really simple. If you know it, you can crack it. So let's say for activity, so I've created a small network diagram for you all to understand it, and it's simplified. So this is the simplest question you may get in your exam, but this is just an example for you to understand how to calculate the network diagram. What is precedency? What is successor activity? What is predecessor activity? So, for example, C's predecessor activities are A and B, and A and B's successor activities are C. C's successor activity is D, and D's predecessor. So this might seem a little overwhelming to you. So predecessor activity is C, right? So that is simple predecessor and successor. So now let's say activity A starts on day 1, that is early start, and it takes 3 days to complete the activity done. So let's say we started on day 1 and we need 3 days to complete the task. So let's say day 1, day 2, and day 3, right? So now day 3 is over. So here, whatever activity you'll start would be day 4, right? So you just add these two numbers, duration and early start, and then you get the early finish. That is the day 4th. Earliest you can finish the activity A is day 4th. Okay. Similarly, for activity B, if you start from day 1, and if it takes 5 days to complete the work, total it's going to take 6 days. Okay. Now, for activity C will say 3 days to complete the task. And now you have 2 predecessors for C, activity A and activity B. What is the earliest start you can start activity C? So since activity C is dependent on A and B to complete, if either one is not completed, you cannot start activity C. Hence, you will at least have to start on the 6th day if A and B both are completed. So here, as per the diagram, you see on the 6th day, you'll finish off task B as well. So take the number which is higher, 4 or 6, for the predecessor activity. So 6 is higher, so we take 6 since so 6th day B activity is going to be completed. Now activity C will only start on day 7th, right? It can't start on 6th because you have completed, let's say, what if you complete activity B on the 6th day in the evening and you are going home? You're done for the day. So you can only start activity C on the 7th day, right? So we put early start as 7. Now 7 plus 3 is 10. So earliest finish, we can finish activity C is on 10th day. So we can put 11th day here to start off activity D. So 11 plus 10 is 21. So total 21 days will take to complete task A, B, C, and D. All right, you put the early finish here because, so now you have the top row ready. Now you just simply put the last day and drop it down to late finish and late start, right? So for the last activity. So it is 21 minus 10 is 11. So latest start could be 11th day, and which means you'll have to finish activity C by 10th day, latest by 10th day. Now 10 minus 3 is again 7. Now 7, we will carry forward it for activity A and B both. But we'll subtract 1 day because that is the latest start of activity C. Hence, latest finish of predecessor activity should be at least 1 day prior. So we put 7 minus 1 is 6, 6 to activity A and B both. Now 6 minus 5 is 1. You put 1, late start is 1 for activity B. And for activity A, it is late start minus duration again. 6 minus 3 is 3. So you put 3. Now let's look at why I have highlighted in red. So here, if you see 21 minus 21 is 0, 11 minus 11 is 0. It should tally and it should come to, it should equal both and with where you come across. And hence you come across, so there you come across float. So you have 0 float You cannot delay this activity, otherwise your schedule will be delayed. So here, if you subtract late finish minus early finish or late start minus early start, you'll get 0. Same you do with the other activities, that is late finish, late start for activity C is equal to late start, late finish of activity C. So you put 0, since 10 minus 10 is 0, 7 minus 7 is 0. Now for activity B, we have 6 minus 6 is 0, 1 minus 1 is 0. So if you get 0 here as a float, which means it's a critical path, you cannot delay even a day for these activities to be completed. Otherwise, your schedule will be delayed. So that's about critical path. Critical path has a float is always 0. Now let's look at for activity A. Here, 6 minus 4 is 2 and 3 minus 1 is 2. Yay! So we have tallied and all our math is correct. So yay for that. And now let's look at what does float 2 mean. So float 2 at activity A means you have 2 days of float, which means you can delay activity A by 2 days, not more than that. If you delay activity A by more than 2 days, again, it will affect the finish date you have scheduled. It could be less than 2 days. Like if you finish off within the 4th day as planned, that's completely fine, but you should not exceed more than 2 days. So that is our network diagram. Now let's move on to precedence and successor activity, the relationship between both, and how do you identify predecessor activity and successor activity, how it goes hand in hand. Predecessor activity is C, right? So that is simple predecessor and successor. So now let's say activity A starts on day 1, that is early start, and it takes 3 days to complete the activity done. So let's say we started on day 1 and we need 3 days to complete the task. So let's say day 1, day 2, and day 3, right? So moving on to types of dependencies in precedence diagram method. There are 4 types of dependencies of tasks, which are finish to start, start to start, finish to finish, start to finish. Now let's talk about each one of them. Finish to start is nothing but A must finish, task A must finish before B starts. Start to finish, that was finish to start. A must finish for B to start. Now start to start. Task A must start for task B to start. It is dependent on A's starting point. Finish to finish is nothing but task A needs to be finished before B gets finished. You can do A and B task parallelly, but A needs to finish in order to have task B finished. And finally, start to finish. A needs to start for task B to finish. So that's a simple dependencies in precedence diagram method, which will be used in Gantt chart and while scheduling, while creating the schedule, and network diagram as well. Now talking about estimating duration, you need to consider a few things for estimating the duration. They are law of diminishing returns, number of resources, advances in technology, and student syndrome or Parkinson's law. So let's see what each of these means. Law of diminishing returns means, moving on to types of dependencies in precedence diagram method. Adding more people or effort doesn't always mean you get proportionally more results. We all have faced in our professional lives that managers or people, project managers add more people to the project, thinking that the project will finish on time or before time. However, you might have also experienced that adding more people doesn't necessarily always means that the project will finish on time or the task will get finished on time. There are tasks where adding more people doesn't make sense and eventually it drops down the productivity. So limit your team. For example, agile teams are limited to have somewhere between 3 to 9 people in the team, because agile adding more people or effort doesn't always mean you get proportionally more results. We all have faced in our team is trying to avoid law of diminishing returns happening. right? So don't add too many people and think that the task will get completed. It might not get completed. In fact, eventually it might drop the productivity. So that's one. Number of resources. It is self-explanatory that you need to consider number of resources for estimating the duration. Advances in technology is nothing but, in today's fast-paced world, it is necessary to consider the advancements of technology and how fast the technologies are evolving and the learning curve. So when the learning curve is there, new technologies are introduced to the team. Consider the time when they have the learning curve. They are still trying to learn the tool or the technique, whatever you have introduced. It might take time. Once they learn, they'll pick up the speed. But before that, when they are learning, it might take a considerate amount of time, which you need to add into your consider during estimating the duration. Students syndrome and Parkinson's law. So it is something related to motivation of staffs or employees per se. Student syndrome. So team is trying to avoid law of diminishing returns happening. Right? So don't add too many people and think that the task will get completed. It might not get completed. In fact, eventually, remember when you were a student and exams were near, you start to study in that anxiety or in that pressure. But before that, you had a lot of time to read and study, but you did not. You waited until the very last moment. That is student syndrome. Even if you have time before, you don't do the work. You wait until the very last moment. While Parkinson's law is similar but a bit different, where you, for example, tell your manager that it will take 5 days. But actually, the task is too small and it might complete in 2 days. But you just add a little buffer and say the task will complete in 5 days. So the task will take 5 days, the full 5 days. It's Parkinson's law. That's what Parkinson's law says, that the time you save, it will expand, the work will expand and finish it on that time. Right? Even if the work is short, it can be completed in 2 or 3 days. It will still take those full 5 days. Just like a PMP. If you think you can give your exam in 5 months or 6 months, then you'll take full 6 months to study and prep. But if you, however, you can still, if you focus and study well, you can give it in 3 to 4 months. So just avoid Parkinson's law while for this exam as well. Let's moving on to resource leveling and resource smoothing. Resource leveling, when you see the term, these 2 terms are very important to understand. You don't need to mug it up, just understand just these 4 points. Resource leveling is nothing but limit labor time. For example, there are a few industries where the employee cannot work over that time. For example, in aviation industry, captains or crew member cannot work, for example, say 40 hours or 50 hours per month. If they work, the research and study says that their productivity and focus, which is very important in aviation industry, drops significantly. So there is a cap, there's a limit for captains to fly in a month. They have to follow that rule, and that is something called resource leveling, that there is a strict limit labor time. And this often, of course, extends the project schedule, because even if it is very necessary for the captain to fly this flight, we don't have any resources. However, we cannot ask the captain to fly, even if he or she is available. So that is something, resource leveling. And resource smoothing. Resource smoothing is a bit similar, but when the task is on critical path, the limit labor can be adjusted. It's a bit flexible only and only when the task is on critical path. So it adheres to deadline, versus here in resource leveling, it adheres to employees' max limit hour or time. And it adheres to the time. I hope these 2 terms are very, very clear. Please note it down. It will come in your exam, so make sure you understand both of these terms. Now, progressive elaboration and rolling wave planning. Let's understand the difference between the 2 and what each one of it means. So progressive elaboration is a principle, whereas rolling wave planning is a technique. Progressive elaboration tells us why, and rolling wave planning tells the how. right? So think of it as progressive elaboration is an umbrella, and rolling wave planning is a technique under progressive elaboration. So progressive elaboration is the process of continuously improving and detailing a plan as more specific and accurate information becomes available over time. It's not rework. It's a planned, intentional refinement of the project documents. Whereas rolling wave planning is a technique. It is a progressive elaboration technique where near work is planned in detail, future work is planned at a high level, and it is broken down in more details as the project progresses. So as we have seen in the previous video about the product backlog item, it is a planned at a very high level, and as and when we get the information, we plan it in detail. So that is similar to progressive elaboration and rolling wave planning. However, it's an agile way of working, however, but it is also in waterfall and hybrid approaches. So it's not only limited to agile. I hope this is very, very clear to you. This is also very important. It might come in your exam, so make sure you understand these two terminologies very clear. And I think you guys are doing great. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Remember, when you were a student and exams were near, you start to study in that anxiety or in that pressure. But before that, you had a lot of time to read and study, but you did not. You waited until the very last moment. That is student syndrome. Even if you have time before, you don't do the work. You wait until the very last moment. While Parkinson's law is similar but a bit different, where you, for example, tell your manager that it will take 5 days. But actually, the task is too small and it might complete in 2 days. But you just add a little buffer and say the task will complete in 5 days. So the task will take 5 days, the full 5 days. It's Parkinson's law. That's what Parkinson's law says that.